My mother-in-law takes care of me at night when my wife is not around. It turns out that my wife Amanda, who rarely gets sick, had to be hospitalized. This left me in charge of our 3-year-old daughter Margarita without the option of taking days off or vacations due to my work. So, I found myself in a dilemma. Where could I take such a young girl in this situation? Desperate for help, I had no choice but to turn to my mother-in-law and ask her for help. I explained my distress and proposed that she take Margarita to her house or come to ours. It was a situation where something had to be done. To my relief, Maria didn't hesitate to respond to my call and immediately came to visit us. Despite arriving home after a long day of work, she found time to play with Margarita and engage in conversations with my mother-in-law. I must say that Maria is a truly wonderful woman. She gave birth to Amanda when she was just 18 years old, and despite that, she remains in excellent shape. She doesn't seem to be older than 35, which is surprising. What struck me the most was her calm and friendly demeanor. She quickly found common ground with me, which made the whole situation pleasant and wonderful. My mother-in-law took care of Margarita, cooked for us, and took care of the household chores without any complaints. That's how we lived. We handed over the object to the customer, received a bonus, and had a standardized workday. I came home early, played with Margarita, involved my mother-in-law in the game, and Margarita laughed happily, following her grandmother who trotted around the room on the back of a toy horse. I held her by the ears to keep her from falling off Daddy's back, or rather the horse. She kicked the sides of the horse with her heels. The noise of laughter and the joyful screams of the girl. It was time for her bath. As always, Margarita made a fuss in the tub. My mother-in-law and I were there soaked, waiting for Margarita's ship to finally attack. My mother-in-law resembles Amanda, only a little fuller, but that makes her even more attractive. It gives her a feminine charm, and their faces are similar. Sometimes it seems that they are two sisters, one younger and the other older. My mother-in-law, with her feminine charm, feeling my interest in her, quickly calmed Margarita, took her out of the furious ocean, and sent us to bed, saying that she needed to change into something dry. Look how wet Margarita was. She fell asleep, and my mother-in-law and I sat in the kitchen. I bought some wine with my extra money, and we sat down to enjoy the drink, talking about life. One word led to another, and we moved on to family matters. My mother-in-law began to say how happy she was for her daughter, what a good husband she had found, loving, affectionate, tender. That the son-in-law not get angry or offended because it is known that mother and daughter have no secrets between them. So she even knows how things are going for us in bed. How lucky Amanda is to have such a loving husband who will carry her to bed in his arms and kiss her all over her body. My mother-in-law had never experienced anything like this before, not in movies, not in real life. All her life she had been trapped in a relationship with an alcoholic man who had never spoken a kind word to her or caressed her. All he did was shout. Fortunately, he was out of their lives now. My wife Amanda was very lucky to have me by her side. Unlike her ex-husband, I came home sober and not only hugged her once a month but showed her love and tenderness every day. My mother-in-law told me all this as tears fell down her cheeks. Her face reflected a bitter smile, her nose red, and she sobbed between words. I looked at her and realized that she was a normal woman but lacked happiness, something that was so important for a woman. I felt moved and began to console her, assuring her that things would get better and that everything would be fine. I stroked her head like a child, which only made her cry even more. We decided to go to the kitchen to have coffee to calm our hearts. After listening to her story about her husband, I felt the need to comfort her and pamper her. Both. We were standing in the middle of the kitchen. Our hands rubbing and caressing. Mutually she looked like Venus, emerging from the foam of the sea. Mature body was magnificent. I closed my eyes briefly and my mother-in-law asked me not to look at her with so fast and contempt. I explained to him that a woman feel loved through words and let's make sure. Be proud of your body and figure. I said many other things that now I don't remember clearly at this point. The words flowed freely from me. Mouth without passing through me. Brain. Then I lifted my mother-in-law in my arms and took her to the room. She offered no resistance, giving himself completely to me. His arms wrapped around me, neck, and kissed me on the ear. While she whispered something, I laid her on the bed and slowly undressed her. I kissed her from her feet to her neck, pausing at her most intimate parts and making her moan with pleasure like a raging bull. I did it like never before, lifting her in my arms and putting her against the furniture, making her feel everything. When we finished, we lay together, embraced, releasing the accumulated tension. Slowly, I tenderly stroked my mother-in-law with love and tenderness. It was so special that I didn't want to get out of bed. However, Margarita woke up crying, and my mother-in-law and I quickly ran to her room. After calming her down and giving her a drink, my mother-in-law leaned over the crib and started humming a song. While cradling Margarita with a heart full of gratitude, I told my mother-in-law that I would go to bed the next morning. When I entered the kitchen, I found my mother-in-law preparing breakfast. Margarita was still asleep and my mother-in-law was full of energy and joy. She moved effortlessly and hummed a melody as she stood in the doorway. I wished her good morning and enjoyed seeing my mother-in-law so radiant. We ate a hearty breakfast and then washed Margarita's dirty face before heading to the hospital to visit my wife, Amanda. Amanda was happy to see us all together. Silently, she asked me not to hurt my mother-in-law and then privately whispered something to her mother while Margarita and I collected yellow leaves in the hospital's public garden. Upon returning home, my mother-in-law confessed to me that Amanda had asked her to watch over me to ensure that I didn't escape elsewhere. She asked me to temporarily replace her in her role as a wife, although it embarrassed her to make such a request. She had always considered her mother as her friend and had no one else to trust for such an important favor. Seeking help elsewhere could threaten the family's unity by taking away a good man. My mother-in-law promised to do everything Amanda asked. After putting Margarita to bed, we went to bed together, temporarily assuming the roles of spouses. Before sleeping, my mother-in-law and I discussed Amanda's request and reflected on the love she must have for me to dare to make such a request. My mother-in-law cried tears of happiness for her daughter, grateful that she had a husband like me. Finally, Amanda was discharged from the hospital and my mother-in-law left. I don't know what Amanda told her or what secrets were hidden, but I noticed that Amanda began to send me often to her mother under the pretext of helping me. When I returned home, she never asked me anything. Additionally, I realized that my visits to my mother-in-law's house coincided with the days when Amanda was there. After a while together, Amanda confessed to me that she had involved her mother in our intimacy. At first, she admitted feeling a bit jealous, but seeing how her mother flourished in that aspect of her life, she was happy for her and did not regret her decision. After all, Amanda felt she had more than enough love from me and sometimes even considered my activity excessive. My mother-in-law was also grateful to be able to enjoy that connection and share intimate moments with me. However, Amanda worried that I might get used to her mother's presence and stop loving her as her wife. To alleviate her fears, I kissed her and assured her. We used her house as a kind of summer home where we could enjoy the company and love of the whole family. Our unconventional living situation continued for several years, and during that time even more surprising events occurred. Amanda became pregnant and shortly after, my mother-in-law did too. Now Margarita has a younger sister and a brother who is also her uncle. Our family expanded unexpectedly but filled with love. Despite the unique circumstances, our children, Carolina and Antonio, have developed a close bond and treat each other as siblings. I strive to provide the same amount of attention and love to our children, and Maria also loves them deeply. Despite the unusual circumstances, we feel comfortable in our family life. Of course, we don't openly discuss the exact nature of our relationship with others. Sometimes I worry about how the children will understand what is happening as they grow up, but I know that the time will come when we will have to be honest with them. One night, when the children were already asleep, I had a conversation about this topic with Amanda and Maria. We shared our concerns about the possible emotional impact it could have on Carolina and Antonio to realize the complexity of our family bond. However, we all agreed that our priority was to raise them in an environment full of love and understanding. I told them that no matter what happens, love will always protect them, and together we will overcome any challenge that comes our way. The women smiled lovingly at me and we shook hands. At that moment, despite persistent concerns about the future, I felt a sense of peace. Our children were happy and healthy, Amanda no longer felt jealous, and Maria radiated happiness, free from the loneliness she had experienced in the past. Perhaps our children will judge us someday, but they will also inherit the fierce devotion we show each other. Although our family may seem strange, the foundations of loyalty and sacrifice are deeply rooted in these walls. That night I lay in bed between Amanda and Maria, their heads resting comfortably on my shoulders. Carolina and Antonio were sleeping soundly in the adjoining room, knowing nothing about the complex bonds that united us. As I fell asleep, I offered a prayer of thanks for them. No matter what challenges we face in the future, our family will survive because our shared past guarantees that together we will overcome everything. These were today's stories. I sincerely ask you to subscribe and like the video. That way, I know you enjoyed it and I can continue uploading more stories. It would help me a lot. If you watch the next video, we are sure you will enjoy it. See you tomorrow on Reddit Day.